Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie Yeadon, and I'm the CEO and co-founder with Impetus Digital. We've built some of the best-in-class asynchronous and synchronous virtual collaboration and communication tools. We work with life science companies from across the globe and have done so over the last 13 years to help them do everything from digitizing their advisory boards, creating virtual medical education, investigator meetings, working groups on market access. And since we've also launched Insight Events. This is a great platform where companies have used to launch sales meetings, corporate events, hackathons, all kinds of other really crazy, innovative things. But more importantly, at Impetus, we really believe that everything starts with a conversation. And from these big, hairy, audacious conversations with some leading edge thinkers, the digital provocateurs, and really inspiring entrepreneurs, we can all work to collectively and positively disrupt healthcare. So we don't think it just starts with a conversation. We really need to do things to sustain the conversation. This is precisely why we have created the Insight platform, so you can have a series of asynchronous and synchronous collaboration touch points over time so that you can really move the needle on your personal and brand objectives and priorities. So I'm really excited to have one of these leading edge thinkers with me today. This is actually Valerie Sullivan. Valerie serves as the president and CEO of etectRx. This is a digital health company that has developed the FDA cleared ID cap, it's trademarked, and it's a system that is uniquely addressing the issue with basically the never ending issue that pharma always runs into, which is how do we get people to adhere to their oral medications? So with over 30 years of experience, Valerie has brought into pharma. She's got work experience in digital health and all sorts of pharma service industries. Valerie offers a unique perspective to the impact that digital pills can have on the entire healthcare ecosystem. So very excited about talking about that today. Valerie graduated from the College of the Holy Cross with a Bachelor of Arts in Chemistry and holds an MBA in Finance and Marketing from the Northeastern University. As an adjunct professor in the management department at Bentley University, chairman of the Group Insurance Commission, and previous board positions of CareMets and 2 Labs, Valerie has deep and broad expertise across the complex healthcare ecosystem, which she wants to leverage in order to support potential pharma clients with the ID cap system. Welcome, Valerie. So happy to have you on the show.
Thank you, Natalie. I am so thrilled to be here. I appreciate you inviting me to come in and have a conversation.
Absolutely. And I love your background there, by the way, about every day starting your day with a grateful heart. I think it's a wonderful message. So thank you for having that in the background.
Oh,
you also
pleasure.
have a very stunning and spectacular background. I love the fact that you are a female leader that decided to lead a career in STEM. We want many, many more women to really delve into that, especially in the technology space. Tell us a little bit about that plan and how you diverted that and said, hey, I need a little bit of business experience. And then you taking all of that great stuff that you've learned in the past to bring you to this entrepreneurial position that you're in today.
Yeah, no, good question. I grew up in a family of 3 girls. We didn't have any boys, and I had a very strong mother. And she quite frankly demanded that we did everything that boys did. So, okay, I'll be good in math and science, and pursued a career in chemistry, and really glad I did. It wasn't always the easiest to be in a lab. I like people. And so I did enjoy the rigor and the analysis and the pulling out of data and trying to solve problems. So at the core, I do feel like I like data, I like solving problems, and I like getting things done. But I didn't like the loneliness of the lab. So that's when I decided to pursue a master's in business, an MBA. And, you can apply the same skills that I learned as a chemistry major and as a chemist into business, because you have to solve problems, you have to look at the data, it informs your thinking. And so I'm really grateful that I did start my career in the sciences, and still, quite frankly, as somebody who came up through the sales and marketing of Pfizer, do consider that still science, even if we weren't the ones bringing life-saving medicines to patients all over the world.
Absolutely. So tell us, so it's always really interesting to me as I find people who have been, who've grown up, if you will, in the corporate environment, pharma being one of those ones, and then moving into these entrepreneurial spaces, somewhat a little scarier, a little riskier. Why did you decide to make that move, and what influenced your decision?
Yeah, thanks. I absolutely loved my career at Pfizer. I had great bosses. The culture was terrific. I was really fortunate that I was picked for new parts of Pfizer. So I was chosen as one of a handful of people to go in and figure out, how to negotiate with managed care. And quite frankly, I felt like Pfizer was like, okay, Valerie, go figure out how to make this managed care stuff go away, like these formularies. So that was early. I'm dating myself, right? But this is back in the early to mid 90s. And I was in this entrepreneurial group of people who were focused on managed care. And we were forging ahead on, how do you build relationships in the payer community? How do you integrate that into your brand marketing? Because back then, brand teams had, our physician marketing and our patient, our pharma focused reps. We didn't even have patient marketing. So, I love that spirit of let's make something happen. And again, good culture at Pfizer. So the next job I took at Pfizer was in another innovative approach that they took at the time. We had a brand marketing group for every brand, and the country was the USA. But how Lipitor performed in California was different than how Lipitor performed in Boston. And yet you had a national strategy. And so, the company decided to put marketing folks into the local market to work with the sales team. And again, I was one of 5 that was chosen to be part of that. We grew to be 22. And in fact, I do think that, more and more of the way pharma thinks of, US marketing is at the local level. So having those 2 experiences at Pfizer helped me to be brave enough to be entrepreneurial.
It is a wonderful thing. And I have to say, it's really interesting that you were already exposed, if you will, to this uncharted territory area. Nobody's been here before. You're the explorator, you're the explorer, bring us back the information and tell us how. And I'm also just wondering, in your pharma experience, what were some of your learnings, understandings of the gaps as it relates to patients? We talk about the customer journey, we talk about the patient journey and how it goes from inception to the time of, meeting with a prescriber, and then the pharmacy that's dispensing, and suddenly, there's the patient sitting in front of their pill. And then the question it comes down to is what happens after that? So as you've been going through this exploratory phase, what were some of the learnings about that particular situation, patient in front of pill, and how do we ensure that there's a sustainable interaction and relationship?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a loaded question, quite frankly. Well, so at Pfizer, and in pharma in general, because I've been working with pharma folks, my entire career, what I can tell you, a big learning is that everybody wants to help the patient. That is absolutely the message I hear all the time. And I bet you do too, Natalie, in your work. I mean, there is a deep sense of how do we make sure patients are supported with these life-saving medicines that we bring to market. And the historical way that the healthcare system itself has been structured is, physician writes the script and hands it to the patient. And, that's how I got my start. There weren't a lot of, payer interventions and formularies. And so that simple interaction between physician and patient, I think naively, if I reflect, I just assumed patients would take their meds. And then as I, because the doctor said so, right? And yet I do believe that the evolution of healthcare with payers and more complicated specialty medicines and so much more innovation in surgeries and in outpatient support. I mean, just the industry continues to evolve. And there's so much complexity as to why patients don't take their medicine. So when you're saying like that patient is in front of their pill, it has a lot to do with how much education they got from their physician, how much trust they have with their physician, what the cost is of the medication, how they feel today. And do they feel shame that they have to take medicine? Do they feel empowered? Do they feel good? Are there side effects? And so it's really complicated information that you can collect from a whole bunch of sources. But where our digital pill system comes in is that we're not really selling digital pills. We're selling answers to the question of, did the patient take their med? Because if they didn't, then we can intervene with some of those behavioral challenges that may be able to help the patient stay on course.
I love it. What a great explanation of where you intercede on that patient journey with the prescribed medication. So let's actually talk about etectRx and specifically about the ID cap system. Why don't you tell the audience here, what is a digital pill?
So a digital pill, and our system is FDA cleared, it's ready for commercial use. And our digital pill is a standard gelatin capsule that we buy from a manufacturer. And inside it has a tag which has a tiny grain of sand size sensor that when combined with an oral pill into the capsule and the tag makes a digital pill. And the patient swallows it. At the same time, they're wearing an external reader that go around their neck. Our next generation is on the wrist. And when they swallow it, there's a signal that's sent from inside the body to outside the body that says, yep, you've swallowed the pill. And then once that reader has registered that, then you can take off the external reader. And then there's a patient app so that the patient can see that they took their med. And then there's, if the patient consents, there's a dashboard that says, the patient has taken their med. So our care team can see if a patient has been confirmed that they took their med, and they can intervene if appropriate.
Wow, it sounds so simple, but yet brilliance is in simplicity. And I'm sure so many people listening to this is like, this is the age-old question I was just mentioning earlier, adherence. Everybody's doing everything they can to ensure that sustainability. So let's actually just kind of double click on some of this. So you've mentioned it's just basically a regular pill with some sort of a wireless embedded sensor. I guess one of the first things that people are going to ask is this sensor safe? It's now in my body. What's going to happen? And all these other things. How do you respond to that question or concern?
Yeah, so the sensor is made up of magnesium and other materials that are already in our body. And so it's safe, it's been cleared by the FDA, and it's a tiny amount. And the radio frequency signal that comes from inside the body to outside the body transmits a fraction of what type of energy is coming from your cell phone every day. And that's why the FDA gave it its seal of approval. We went through a 510K clearance with thousands and thousands of pages of data to show that our system worked and was safe and effective. And in some of our research, we get patients that are interested in learning more. On average, between 55 and 80% of patients say, yep, I'll take a digital pill. And if you think about this generation of physicians coming out of med school, they're going to be, just consumed by virtual. And then you add on the pandemic where we've become, creatures of being able to use a technology, and you guys have been on the cutting edge of it. But these physicians are going to want to be able to manage their patients remotely. And so if you're prescribing medication over a telehealth visit, you want to know that that patient has taken it. And so we believe that the adoption will accelerate, and we've seen it already with the pandemic and with the revolution in telehealth and digital health in general.
I love that, and the fact that there's all kinds of clinical studies to support, that this is better than just taking the pill itself, in terms of we're measuring the level of adherence, which is fantastic. It's interesting as we start to delve into the future world, and we'll get into this a little bit further around nanotechnology and what that's all going to look like in the future. But the ancestor, if you will, to what you're doing is people have looked at various mechanisms of targeting medications into certain places and areas and other sorts of things like that, using microorganisms and their general motility, if you will, of getting from point A to point B. And so one of the other questions also has to be is, how does your device get powered, and how does it move, or where does it go? And, this is always ends up being a question, is where's the power coming from? Is it battery operated? What are sort of the mechanics behind this? And sort of the next tier version is what you guys are doing, which is chemically modified, or it's chemically powered. So can you discuss a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, it's proprietary technology. We have 15 patents. We just received our 15th this year. And basically the magnesium and the silver chloride that are part of the sensor create that signal. It acts like a battery, and it's able to generate a very, very low power radio frequency in a band of around 285 to 320. So, very low, very safe, and it comes from inside the body to outside the body. And there's no other technology that offers that. And what's interesting and exciting about our proprietary technology is that the body doesn't do a good job of conducting because, we're 70% water. And so our signal can go about a meter around the body. And that's very helpful in clinical trials and with patients, because, sometimes they might forget to have their reader on, and, yet the signal, again, it could pick it up. And that's different than other type of signals that require a patch to be read.
So that's actually really fascinating. And so the current model of what you have with the ID cap system is that there's like a reader, like you said, that you wear almost like a necklace. Yes. And it does the reading. So what other technologies are using so that the two match up? The little signal that's coming from the pill in your stomach, kind of disintegrating and then just sending this neat little signal. And then what's going on in your chest with this little pack, is Bluetooth being used there?
So it is not Bluetooth. So that's the cool stuff about our technology. And I get this great group of engineers that have developed it, get really excited. It is proprietary. And what happens is they've built the reader to have an algorithm in there, as well as an integrated, another sensor that can pick up the signal. So you swallow the pill, and it's like Natalie, the pill's going, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. And then the reader is saying, okay, I hear you, I hear you. And when there are enough of those signals, we call them heartbeats, that match up that, yes, indeed, that was a pill, then it registers on your cell phone. You can see, oh, there's my pill, I took it. And accuracy rates are, in current clinical trials, are 98 to 99% right now. So really accurate, really simple. We like to say our system is simple, elegant, and flexible because of its ability to be able to be used so easily by patients and researchers.
Love it. Let's actually just talk about some of the the things that are the wins in this. So obviously this is going to be focused on people who are ingesting pills. We realize that there's all kinds of mechanisms that we currently manage conditions, including IV, subcutaneous, multiple other types of, injections, et cetera. And this is specific on pills. So what are the opportunities associated with pill takers or for pill takers?
We looked at research and we looked at where patients are challenged with adhering to their medication. And we really think with the growth in oncology medications that are orally based, we think that's a very high opportunity area because these pills are expensive and they're hard to take in a way, because if you think about oncologists, they're used to infusing medications, and still plenty of good medications that are infused, but there's also really good medications that can be used orally. And so the ability for a physician to be able to manage when they dispense a patient's oral chemo and see that day that a patient didn't take it, and do they wonder, is it a side effect? Are they not feeling well? Or did they forget? And to be able to intervene that day, whether it's a text message that gets generated by our system or a nurse that calls the patient, we believe that you can intervene to help that patient stay on their therapy, one, so they can get either the symptom relief or the cure rate, or two, if they are having side effects, because these chemo drugs can be powerful, they can intervene with antiemetics. They can get them to the hospital maybe quicker if needed, but maybe they don't have to get them to the hospital because they can intervene in real time. And that's what I was saying at the beginning. Yes, we have digital pills, but what we're really selling is data and information that you can't get any other way. So we're providing answers to questions. Did this patient take their med? And if they didn't, why? And can I help?
Yeah, love it. It's like I said, it's just a brilliant and simple and succinct solution. Is there an age parameter around the use of this digital pill or the ID cap system? What I mean specifically is we oftentimes see with children, for example, under the age of 12, who might have challenges associated with pill taking. And then similarly, is there issues with very aged individuals who have difficulty in swallowing? What are some of the parameters and ideas that you give to physicians, prescribers, or even sponsors or manufacturers that you work with on how best and with whom to use these smart pills with?
Yeah, good question, Natalie. Thank you. I want to make it clear right now that we are still looking for our very first pharmaceutical partner, because we believe that pharma has the most to advance and is the most innovative when it comes to new technologies. And so we got our FDA clearance in 2019. And we are out talking to pharmaceutical companies about using our technology in clinical trials, because we know that clinical trials, despite journaling and pill counts and pill bottles that send a signal, there's no one way to confirm that a patient has taken their medication except for our digital pill system. And so we believe that we can advance clinical trials because you'll get a timestamp when a patient's taken their med, and you'll be able to know what that dosing is. So the opportunity to advance your data sets and to really understand how your drug works is not, the possibilities, seem to advance trials. So we'd love, and we're ready for use now. So we have clinical trials underway across many academic centers in the US, and we're ready to work with pharma companies. Now, the question you asked is who's best for this? In our studies, we've had patients as young as 18, so it's FDA cleared for those over the age of 18, and up to 83. So wide swath of diversity from age as well as race. And again, we think that the use cases, we'd love to work with physician groups to suss that out. But in patients who, either are taking oral chemo meds, the hepatitis C market could be a good one. We've done a lot of work in HIV treatment as well as prevention. There's something to be said about using these in pain meds, opioid protection and detection. So, we could be kids in a candy store with all different use cases. And what we really need most is a pharma partner who's willing to be a thought partner with us to think through, how do we go to market? Because without having their pills to put in our capsule, we're limited in the type of work we can do, broadly to advance the data that comes with knowing a patient absolutely took their medication.
So we spent some time talking right now, Valerie, about the benefits of pharma companies partnering with etectRx in terms of informing their clinical studies. So when it comes to the actual day-to-day dealing with, and then they get their drug, for example, approved based on the data, for example, that you've helped to input on how the medications are actually taken, and maybe there's some tweaks or turns that they do on the dosage administration or the number of times or whatever it may have the impact on. But now we're talking about the drug is now approved. There's a day-to-day usage with patients. Many pharma companies indulge or create these patient support programs. These patient support programs have everything from reminders for adherence to navigation of how to access drugs for access, insurance companies, et cetera. How can etectRx work with pharma on building out their patient support programs so that the addressable market as it relates to actually adherence on a day-to-day basis is actually measured?
My job about 5 years ago was to run a patient support program. So I know intimately how to build those programs, how to deploy them. And I love the patient services area because I believe that patients deserve to feel empowered and they have the ability to, put their own power at play to treat their health in a way that brings them the best outcomes. So that business is evolving and tech enabled, but a lot of the patient service business is still manual, nurses calling patients. We like to call it cheeks and seats, meaning that you have these very talented call center agents that answer the phone and they call patients, they outreach to them, and they try to engage them in taking their medications and understanding if they took it. And so I'd like to re-envision patient support services with the addition of our digital pill system, because there's all this great technology that's underway in the patient support center, whether it's texting patients information and being able to automatically refill their prescription or do automated benefit verifications. Great technology. But just think about if you also had a list of all the patients who are on your service, and you knew which ones didn't take their meds. Those would be the ones that you reach out to and spend the extra time and try to see, is it shame? Is it cost? And you'd be able to deploy really talented people to solve problems that are even more targeted, because you had the reason, or at least you knew they weren't taking their meds. Now you have to figure out the reason for it and solve for that so that patients could take their meds. And then for those people who are taking their meds, what about an attaboy? There you go, text that's very targeted. And so, you could say, I think it's great that you're taking your med. How are you feeling? And, again, digital could be able to, create an app, and they already have them, that says, yeah, I feel great. And then you'd have that data that says, here are all the people who are taking their meds, and this is how they feel as a result of it. And we don't have that right now. And so to me, I get really excited about being able to truly address people's issues that help them stay adherent and get the most from their medication.
So you're absolutely right. I love the fact that there's that tail end piece because you're really defining, Valerie, the core essence behind uber precision medicine. So this is like ultra customized to that patient's particular situation. If it happens to be about money or, like you were saying, some other psychological issues around it or concerns or what we call limiting beliefs, and then really kind of targeting that, which is really, really interesting. And I think the angle that current patient support programs do not have, they're very standardized. And this is taking it to that next level where we're really talking about that extra piece of customized support. What's your thoughts also around what this means for insurers, third-party payers, employers? And I'm just thinking about the costs of non-adherence and all of the ramifications around extended disease, lack of productivity, and all the list goes on, and sort of adding up what all of that costs versus, for example, the cost of your pill. Why would insurance companies be interested in partnering with etectRx in terms of potentially detecting adherence and paying for results, either patient-reported outcomes, benefits to their health, or the longevity of how long they've been adhering to certain medications?
Yeah, payers could definitely benefit from using our technology in very high cost areas where it's unclear if either the patient is getting a benefit or if the patient is taking their medications. And we've seen a lot of excitement around value-based contracts. Our technology could be used in that area. And one question you haven't asked me yet, Natalie, so I'm going to digress a little bit and come back to, is what about Proteus? We get that question all the time. And Proteus had a similar technology. It was patch-based, so it didn't have the same in-body abilities out of the body that ours did. So we think it's better because nobody wants to wear a patch 24 hours a day. And we get the question all the time, like, why are you going to be successful when Proteus failed? And Proteus, the company, failed, not the technology. They had good technology, and they didn't. They were the first. They paved the way. We did our 510K on their technology, and they did have a difficult partnership with Otsuka. It's hard to put together uber slick technology folks with pharma. So understandably, the first of its kind partnership. When pandemic hit and Proteus ran out of cash, I do think that Otsuka took an opportunity to bring that technology in-house. So that technology exists. And the reason I bring up Proteus, one, I have a lot of respect for what they did, but two, right before they filed bankruptcy, they announced an amazing deal with TennCare. And TennCare is, as everybody knows, a Medicaid provider in the state of Tennessee, super innovative. And they had a value-based contract that says for every Hep C patient that's cured of their virus, we will pay you X dollars. And it worked. I mean, but it just, nobody's shouting from the rooftop about it because Proteus no longer exists. And I think they got it right. That is the ultimate use case for payers in high cost disease areas, and patients liked it. They had good feedback on it, and it just would be a great use case. And where we're focused though is with the pharma, because pharma folks have that ability to truly innovate. And then we believe they'll bring their technology to their conversations with payers, because it will help them differentiate from others. It will also help them have better data sets. And it could be a real win-win for pharma and payers using our technology on value-based contracts.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. And I think these days, especially the learnings from COVID-19, is real world evidence is a big thing now. And, the sooner that you can get that kind of data and how it impacts. So I completely see the trajectory of focusing on pharma and then all the downward impact that will have. When we talk about pharma as well, there's so many other angles and aspects to this. One of the things that comes to my mind, Valerie, is this idea around counterfeit medications. We talk a lot about tagging these medications and what they could do. If you're already embedding a tag on this, has there ever been any, or is there consideration of adding some further discussions of tagging these medications with some sort of a tag serial, so that not only do you know that the patient took the medication, but they took the right branded one from the right manufacturer?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, that great group of engineers that I have, I told you, they're terrific. They've thought about this before. We need to stay focused on the ID cap system and transforming what we've done in research to deploying a product company that is out with the ID cap system. But we're open to licensing our technology in that use case, like you said, because it's the foundation of our technology is that what we call e-burst, which is the ability to communicate from inside the body to outside the body. And there's tons of use cases besides, the detection one that you mentioned. There's also figuring out how to make sure patients take their pain meds for the person it's prescribed to. So that's one of the ones that we've toyed with quite a lot, because pain med and diversion are such big issues, and they cause so much pain for families of people who become opioid users. So that one would be, another one. But yeah, no shortage of ideas on what could be. What we have to stay focused on as an organization is bringing ID capsule and the ID cap system to clinical researchers.
100%. And as I'm just thinking also about possibilities, I'm thinking about pharma always looking for new mechanisms of administration. So the possibility of changing and shifting to difficult sub-Q, injection, infusions, and then considering redoing it as a pill, and then leveraging etectRx to measure the effectiveness versus the traditional mode of administration. This also makes particularly sense for companies who might be wanting to extend their patent by even just delivering this with a new mode of administration. Any thoughts on that as a unique use case?
Yeah, you're hitting them all, Natalie. You did your homework. The one that I think is super interesting is for NRXs. So when a patient is first prescribed a med, especially if it's through telehealth, right? The doctor can't really assess the patient. It's a new patient maybe, and so you can get a sense of that pattern of how they're taking their medications at the outset. So as a physician or as a caretaker, you can understand what's that level of motivation and figure out, is it something I need to work on? Are there other things that I could support the patient? So you don't really need to take a digital pill every single day. And for chronic meds, you would say, yes, this would make so much sense. But at the same time, it could be a refresh, when you come in for your 3-month checkup, or it can be for a loved one. If somebody is living at home. So again, we are so excited about so many different use cases, and we're trying to stay focused on, pharma in clinical research to give them a chance to, because they're the most innovative in all of pharma. And pharma is the most innovative in all of the ecosystem. So, we really want to land a deal with a pharmaceutical company, because all the great ideas you have, we do too. And we're just looking to work with a partner because we can't bring our technology any more further in a way without a great collaborator. And we'll be terrific in terms of our ability to execute and implement, because we're so focused on making sure that we take our technology to the next level.
Huge. And the kind of information that's being sent, we've talked a little bit about the dashboard. So this is the one that clinicians or the CROs or the sponsors have access to. Let's just say, for example, you're involved in a clinical trial with an oncology manufacturer, and they're able to see, over X period of time, this patient took their pills X percentage of time, and here's the outcome versus somebody who might have taken it 60% of the time, and this was their outcome. So really great confirmation on the potential effectiveness of the drug, and not necessarily blaming the efficacy, but it might be other factors like adherence, which we oftentimes don't have the hard data for. So I guess one of the questions also has to do with who else could have access and use and leverage that dashboard. I'm thinking specifically about pharmacists. I'm thinking about after a certain number of pills have been taken, is there an automated message that goes on with an e-prescribing script, and then the patient's shuttled through Amazon their next dosage of the medication? What is in store and in stock for that?
Yes. The patient has to opt in to provide their data to either their physician or to a pharmacist. But you're spot on. Pharmacists have one of the best reputations and are very trusted by their patients. And so who better to help with advancing medication adherence than a pharmacist? And again, I did work in a specialty pharmacy, two different ones actually, one that was owned by a PBM and one that was independent. And we spent a lot of time working with patients and getting them to adhere and refill their medications. But it was a scattershot approach because we just call every patient, and same thing at retail. We all get those automated robocalls from our local pharmacy that says time to refill your medicine. But what if you had a dashboard that talked about which patients did it? You don't have to pay the robo one because you knew they took their pill every day, and the ones that didn't take it. And you can customize it, and you can get a pharmacist to do that medication therapy management that they want to do for patients. They want to help the patient understand their meds and why they're taking them and why they're not, and are there side effects, or are there, multi pills being taken, but one was written by this doctor, one was written by that doctor, and they don't talk. So I do think that the dashboard can be helpful. But what I love about it, again, going back to that data, is that it's so simple, and we designed it to be having an open API that it can integrate with all the data from an Apple Watch or your smartphone, or your Galaxy Watch. And there's those studies are happening. I think there's one at Kaiser with the Galaxy smartwatches to help patients stay adherent to their medication. But wouldn't it be great if they actually knew if they were taking their medication? And we can put our next gen reader attached to a smartwatch to be able to connect that data. Here's all the information we collected on steps and blood pressure and pulse, and then here's your pill, when you took it and what time, and then to see if that makes a difference in how patients are able to live better, healthier lives.
Fantastic.
One question you haven't asked me, if I could. We get this question, and I'm surprised you haven't asked me, so maybe it's coming, but I don't want to run out of time before we at least have a chance to talk about it, is, doesn't this feel like Big Brother watching?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's ultimately the question I was going to start to ask about. Why wouldn't somebody do this? I mean, there's probably a whole series of reasons why somebody would be afraid to take this. We hear all the time about conspiracy theories, and we've heard about the Elon Musk's Neuralink getting embedded into your skull, and even people having concerns about the vaccine and getting something imprinted into your body and your bloodstream, and Big Brother is looking at you. So is that a concern that you hear with patients or physicians?
So thank you. I should have just waited for you to ask me, because we only have a few more minutes left.
Yeah, absolutely. Please. Go ahead.
So we do get that question, and we believe that, not having to wear something to pick it up is a differentiator that gives the patient a degree of confidence that they're not being watched 24 hours a day. So when you take your pill, you put on the reader or you have it on your wrist, And when you're done with it, you can take it off. And we measure one thing and one thing only, and that's, I took my pill at this time. Nonetheless, some people have concerns, and like I had mentioned earlier, we've seen interest in the digital pill that we've done research on anywhere from 55 to 80%. So it's not going to be for everybody. And those data are on folks who didn't have a chance to actually experience it. In our studies, we have found that patients who have used it, they feel that empowerment, and they didn't have that before, because sometimes people forget, so there's not a track of it. But you get that instant gratification that you see it. And so I think that's good. And so, you are going to have some people saying like, oh, I don't know if I want this. But one of the things that I will say our data and our system provides is a degree of accountability. And so part of me feels like people say it's Big Brother because none of us like to be accountable. And I'll tell this quick story because you mentioned that I do teach at Bentley University. It's a part-time gig and I love it. I've been doing it for a long time. And I teach Management 101. And being a manager is a thankless job, I teach the students. Like nobody ever comes to their boss and says, hey boss, thanks for holding me accountable. I'm so glad you pointed out that I came in late, but I know you did it because my colleagues, they had to pick up the slack, but thanks so much. I love that. And yet when we reflect on our careers, we like the managers who held us accountable and gave us that feedback that helped us be better. And so while we might not like to have a digital pill because, oh, maybe I'm accountable, what our data has shown is that people like it because they feel empowered, because they like results. And so I do feel like we need to continue to have this conversation because we don't want to force people, to have a digital pill system. But yet I do feel like if they tried it and they see the value of it, I do feel like they would go, wow, I can put the power of my health in my own hands. And you kind of balance out that physician-patient relationship that, doesn't always help inspire that empowerment.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really important point, Valerie, and that is really what people's motivation is behind it. You have a lot of people who are very proactive with their health, so there's very much of a wellness slant to what they're doing. And then you have people who are very reactive, and they're the ones who might be a little bit more reluctant, who are just not pill takers or don't take it as often. We saw the recent experiment, we're seeing it in the US, for example, where there's a lot of incentivization programs going on for people to get their COVID-19 vaccine. What is your sense around incentivization associated with people taking their pills? You talked a lot about, potentially apps, motivation, dopamine drips by seeing little pings and pongs and messages and prizes and leaderboards and gamification. Is there a future for that to get people not kind of hooked, but hooked on the adrenaline of doing something positive for themselves?
Yeah, great question. We want to own the hardware that is a digital pill. So that digital pill that says, yep, I'm here, you picked me up, and be able to report on it. But we've built our app and our dashboard to be very simple for anybody else to integrate. So, Pear Therapeutics has a prescription digital therapeutic. I'm a huge fan of the work they're doing. And our data could integrate into their Reset and Reset O. And again, could is operative word. Lot of work and talk between now and if it did happen. But they already have some gamifications, and so that could be built into their app with our ability to show them that their pill, the pill was taken successfully. Same thing with many of the other prescription digital therapeutics. I'm not as close to each of those products, but they are building in gamification and they do see that it works. So I don't see us investing our resources in building gamification into our simple dashboard, but I see us being able to integrate and partner with these type of companies long-term to be able to bring them a whole system solution for, better data that can help them, bring to the healthcare ecosystem, so that patients can get the cures and the symptom relief that these life-saving medicines bring to so many patients if they take them.
It is super exciting. And I love that you're really talking about the API, the interoperability, and the ability for so many people to leverage this, because the possibilities are endless. I guess at the end of the day, we've talked a lot about patient by patient management, but there's this whole slew of opportunities around population-based management, data analytics, predictions about how certain populations react. What is the plans, and what does that look like in the future?
We want to be part of it. Whoever's doing population health, we want you to use our data. We want you to include us, so that you will know that patients take their medication, because right now there's no one way to unequivocally say, here's all the data when patients take their meds, because uses today to get to that answer are, they're able to give some extrapolation of, yes, the patient took their med, but they don't confirm it. And there's a gap between what's collected for adherence data and what's actual. And we want to try to fill that gap.
Yeah, I could talk to you for hours. I have to be honest with you, Valerie, I am really particularly excited about what you're doing, just because it's so simple, yet the extensions and opportunities are endless. And the number of people that could tack on, API this, extend what they're doing. I mean, I know that you're looking for a pharma partner, but I personally don't see how that could possibly be an issue long-term. Anybody who's actually got their foresight on what this future looks like in this digitally transformed, rapidly evolving world, can't wait to hear how this is all going to transpire. So keep up the great work. I love what you guys are doing. This, for anybody who is interested, who is from pharma and wants to connect with Valerie, please look for her contact information. We'll be leaving that in the show notes, so please be on the lookout. I'm sure she'd be very happy to hear from you. If you did enjoy this show and this conversation, we also encourage you to check out impetusdigital.com. If you are looking at extending your patient support program, or looking at integrating a smart pill, or being able to measure adherence in your clinical trial and want to modify your protocol, this is precisely what we do with our series of asynchronous and synchronous collaboration touch points with payers, patients, physicians, allied healthcare providers, working together to build new protocols, procedures, ideas, and moving this along in the forward direction. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We would really appreciate as well if you can leave us a review for our podcast. It allows other people to find our information. We want to thank all of you for your time. Valerie, this was a super exciting conversation. Thank you at all, and have a wonderful day ahead.